Another striking aspect of these spirits is their ability to manipulate leaders on a global scale. They don't just influence individuals, they drive nations toward conflict. Look at history. How many wars and uprisings began with leaders succumbing to pride or greed? These aren't just human failings. They're often the result of unseen forces at work. What lessons can we learn from these patterns to guide our choices today? Their impact isn't always dramatic at first. It often begins in subtle ways, like a seed planted in fertile soil. Over time, that seed grows into a tree of rebellion. This serves as a warning to guard the soil of our minds and hearts. Are we cultivating thoughts and beliefs that lead to peace and truth, or are we allowing weeds of deceit to take root? The Spirit's role in gathering the kings of the earth reminds us that evil is both pervasive and persistent. It doesn't rest. It strategizes, adapting to the times and circumstances. This is why vigilance is crucial. Staying informed and connected to a community of faith can help us recognize and resist these influences. Who are the people in your life that help you stay grounded in truth? There's also a lesson here about the power of influence. Just as these spirits manipulate leaders and nations, we, too, have the ability to influence others, for good or ill. Every word we speak, every action we take, creates ripples. Are your ripples contributing to unity and truth, or are they feeding division? This question challenges us to reflect on the kind of influence we want to have. As we explore the role of these demonic spirits, we see how their work prepares the stage for the ultimate judgment. Their influence is pervasive but not unstoppable. The next step in this journey takes us into the heart of God's response. Divine judgment, poured out in bowls that bring justice to a corrupted world and challenge us to confront the consequences of rebellion. The prophecy of Armageddon takes a dramatic turn with the pouring of the 7 bowls of God's judgment. These bowls are more than just symbols. They represent a divine response to centuries of rebellion and corruption. Imagine them as a final reckoning, a moment when the scales of justice tip decisively. Each bowl carries consequences that touch every corner of the world, reminding us that no one escapes accountability. The imagery of the bowls is striking, filled with apocalyptic intensity. One bowl brings sores upon those who bear the mark of the beast. Another turns the seas to blood. It's easy to get lost in the dramatic visuals, but there's a deeper message here. These judgments aren't random. They're precise, targeting the systems and ideologies that have led humanity astray. Could these events be a reflection of the consequences we see unfolding in our own world? Take, for example, the bowl that causes the rivers and springs to turn to blood. Water, the very source of life, is corrupted. This isn't just about physical punishment. It's a metaphor for how rebellion taints even the purest aspects of existence. Think about the resources we take for granted: clean water, air, food. When these are misused or polluted, isn't it a form of judgment in itself? How can we start being better stewards of what we've been given? The judgments also target the systems of power that have exploited the weak and defied God's laws. One bowl brings darkness to the kingdom of the beast, plunging it into chaos. This is a powerful reminder that no system, no matter how invincible it seems, is beyond collapse. History is filled with examples, empires that rose with grandeur but fell under the weight of their own corruption. Are there systems today that mirror these patterns? One of the most humbling aspects of these judgments is how they expose humanity's stubbornness. Even as the world suffers, people refuse to repent. It's a sobering reminder of how pride and defiance can blind us to truth. Have you ever seen someone cling to their way, even when it's clearly not working? It's a challenge to examine our own hearts and ask, are we open to correction, or are we too set in our ways? The pouring of the bowls also speaks to the completeness of divine justice. Each bowl addresses a specific area: nature, governance, society, showing that no part of creation is exempt from accountability. It's like a house being cleansed from top to bottom. While the process may seem harsh, it's ultimately about restoration. What areas of your own life might need this kind of thorough examination? Practical examples of judgment are all around us, though they often come in quieter forms. Think about the consequences of greed, dishonesty, or neglect. A business built on corruption may thrive for a while, but eventually collapses. Relationships fractured by lies eventually crumble. These are echoes of the divine principle that what is sown will be reaped. How can you start sowing seeds of integrity and faithfulness today? The bowls also remind us of the interconnectedness of humanity. When one part of the world suffers, the impact ripples outward. A famine in one region leads to economic strain in another. A war displaces millions, creating crises far beyond the battlefield. This global perspective challenges us to think beyond ourselves. Are there ways you can contribute to healing and restoration, even in small ways? As dramatic as these judgments are, they're not the end of the story. They're part of a larger plan that leads to renewal and victory. It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's purpose. Have you ever faced a situation that felt like judgment, but turned out to be the catalyst for growth and change? These moments reflect the transformative power of God's justice. The imagery of angels pouring the bowls is also significant. Angels often symbolize God's messengers and servants, acting as instruments of His will. This reinforces the idea that judgment is not random, but carefully executed according to a divine plan. It's like a skilled surgeon, removing what's diseased to save the body. How can we trust in the process, even when it feels painful or overwhelming? Divine judgment also serves as a warning to prepare. The prophecy is clear that these events are not sudden. They're the result of choices made over time. This invites us to reflect on our own decisions and the direction they're leading us. Are we building lives that align with eternal truths, or are we investing in things that will ultimately pass away? While these judgments are sobering, they also carry a message of hope. They show that God doesn't ignore evil or injustice. Every wrong will be made right, every hidden deed brought to light. This assurance can be a source of comfort, especially when the world feels chaotic and unfair. How can we hold on to this hope and share it with others? As the bowls of judgment are poured out, they set the stage for the dramatic fall of Babylon. This ancient symbol of corrupt power and rebellion takes center stage, showing us what happens when humanity builds without God. What lessons can we learn from Babylon's downfall, and how do they apply to the systems we see in our own world today? The fall of Babylon is one of the most dramatic moments in the prophecy of Armageddon. Babylon isn't just a city, it's a symbol of humanity's rebellion against God, a representation of corrupt power and self-serving systems. In the Bible, it's described as a seductive yet treacherous entity, drawing nations into its web of deceit. Imagine a structure so grand and alluring, yet so rotten at its core that it collapses under its own weight. What modern parallels can we draw from this imagery? Babylon's allure lies in its promise of wealth, pleasure, and security. But these promises are built on exploitation and oppression. Think about industries or systems today that seem glamorous on the surface but thrive on unethical practices. Whether it's exploitation of labor, environmental degradation, or the spread of misinformation, these are echoes of Babylon. Could it be that the prophecy is closer to reality than we realize? In Revelation, Babylon is called the Great Prostitute, a powerful metaphor for unfaithfulness and greed. This isn't just about literal adultery. It's about humanity's tendency to chase after things that pull us away from God. It's the endless pursuit of materialism, power, and status. Have you ever felt the pull of these temptations? How often do we find ourselves distracted by the very things that ultimately leave us empty? The fall of Babylon is marked by lamentations from those who profited from her. Merchants, Kings and sailors mourn her destruction, not because of her righteousness, but because their source of wealth is gone. This highlights how intertwined we can become with corrupt systems. Reflect on this. Are there areas in your life where you've become too dependent on something that isn't aligned with truth or integrity? One practical example can be seen in financial greed. Companies that prioritize profit over ethics often find themselves at the center of scandals, leading to massive losses. Think of organizations that have collapsed due to corruption or unsustainable practices. Modern-day Babylons falling under the weight of their greed. How can we ensure our own pursuits are grounded in integrity rather than fleeting gain? Babylon's fall also represents the ultimate exposure of hypocrisy. For so long, it appeared invincible, its facade hiding its decay. But when judgment comes, the truth is revealed. This serves as a powerful reminder that no matter how well we hide our flaws or wrongdoings, they will eventually come to light. It's a challenge to live authentically.